Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all the places at Hawk Blogger. And on Tuesdays, we get to hang out with the Hasselbecks. We start in the morning with Matt Hasselbeck, who had quite the honor this weekend. We'll catch up with him about that. But Matt, before I let you jump in here, I had an experience last night. I got to get your input on it. I was walking my dog across the street, and the forest is pretty dense here in the Northwest, and I've made this walk a million times. Some insect falls from a tree onto my arm, and I kind of brush it off, and then it lands on my knee, and I feel an immediate searing pain. Ooh. And I'm like, I'm not proud of the noise that I made when that happened. And I'm not proud of like how I scurried back home, and I'm like, I don't know what happened. What happened? And I don't know if I'm going to gain superpowers from this or not, but, what's the appropriate way to handle a unknown insect attack? What would you do in this situation?
Well, I do know if you get stung by a jellyfish, you pee on it. I do know that, but that's not what you do with a bee sting. It's kind of an inside joke. I don't know if people get that, but my daughter Mallory, my middle daughter, we were on vacation in Florida, and she got stung. Like, she's very, very young. She gets stung by a jellyfish. Ooh. And we got to the fire station real quickly or whatever. They came to us or whatever. And yeah, so somebody had to help her out with that, but that's, if it was a spider though, I don't think that's your, yeah, I don't have fears of spiders. I know some people do. They don't have spiders, snakes. I really don't have any fears of those. I do have some teammates though, some guys that I saw this weekend that are like super, super afraid of needles.
Really?
And they're all tatted up, so it's kind of weird. But but when we would go to get an IV before a hot game, or we're going to play an altitude in Denver, there were certain people, like teammates of mine, that love Skittles, if you know what I'm saying, that like we're afraid to get an IV. So take that for what it is.
Man, well, what a special weekend. Seahawks top 50 players were invited back, you being one of them, and the one that was volunteered, I don't know, to do the halftime speech. How did that work out?
It was valedictory, it was one of those. No, it was a huge honor to get asked. I mean, they could ask so many guys, and I think they did a nice job of like spreading it around responsibility wise. Different people did different things. Sean Alexander was honorary captain at the coin toss. Probably didn't trust me at the coin toss. I get it, whatever, too soon. Max Strong represented our era and the flag raising. Daryl Jackson was on the field. Like, there was some cool stuff. But it's all a blur a little bit. Like, I'm glad you get to talk to AB tonight, because like she'll have a much better perspective on it. Like, it was all a blur to me. My fear. Okay, so I didn't really get to relax till after I talked at halftime. But like, my fear in the stadium, and this is weird, I guess, but I know how to get from the player parking lot to the locker room and from the locker room to the field over at Lumen. And I probably know how to get from the locker room to the x-ray room, but and maybe the press box, but the press room. Other than that, like, when I'm not in those places, I am completely lost. I've not been to a lot of sporting events. So like, my kids and my wife like show me, oh no, over here, the elevator's here, the stairs are here, the escalator's here. I had no idea. So it was kind of fun for me to be in like that environment too.
Well, you have gone through so many things with the Seahawks, as a player. And then since, you've been inducted into the Ring of Honor. And then this is kind of a unique thing. Top 50 players in franchise history. You got to spend the weekend, or at least part of the weekend, with some of these guys. What was that experience like?
It was incredible. Just like, you go from like, starts with like Zorn and Largent, right? And then it goes all the way on to guys that are just, really still doing it, or just recently done it. So yeah, like, you're in the buffet line, and it's Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, and I remember when Cam and Earl were rookies, and they came in and they were learning what Pete Carroll's cover 3 was from Lawyer Malloy and Jordan Babineau and Kelly Jennings and Marcus Trufant. Like, it's cool to see the success that they've had. And so like, for me, like, I sat there and I was teammates with some guys that were in like the AFC West, like Michael Sinclair. I hadn't seen him since, whenever. Of course, he was the first one on the dance floor at the party Saturday night. But they had a party Friday night. It was really incredible. I wasn't able to make it because I was coaching high school football in Nashville. Then we came in Saturday, went to practice. It was incredible. Mike Macdonald had us out, kind of had us break the team down. We hung out with some of the coaches and players for a little bit there and their families. We had a charitable thing where we built bikes that were going to be given away. And that was kind of hard. I immediately found who I would want my teammate to be for building a bike. I knew who I didn't want it to be, and I knew who I did want it to be. So it was fun. Like, it's like a little bit of a blur. It's all kind of coming back to me in pieces, but the Seahawks were just unbelievable. The reception from the fans on the blue carpet was incredible. And, the only thing that was bad was like the ending of the game. But all of it was incredible, seeing so many great friends and old teammates.
Yeah, I have to ask, who is the person that you want helping to build a bike? I mean, this might be news information we need later.
Well, listen, I'll tell you who my teammate was. Now, you did it with your families too, so
okay.
But yeah, so my team, we built 3 bikes. I would have picked Jim Zorn, but I didn't. He was on the other side of the field. I went with Max Unger, Lofa Tatupu, Robbie Tobeck, and Chris Gray. Those were kind of like the 2 teams. So I built 2 bikes with Lofa and Max. Max had the muscle. Lofa was smart. Max also had the connections to get us a pocket knife. We needed a pocket knife to get some stuff open. And then, Tobeck's a grandfather, so I just figured he's been putting a lot of kids' bikes together. And then Chris Gray's just like, if you were stranded on a deserted island, like Chris Gray's the guy. Like, if you ever want to get off or if you want to survive, Chris Gray's your guy. So it was a good time.
Well, I mean, there's a bunch more to ask about that, and it had to be special to have your family there with you through that experience as well, and watch that together. This game,
the fun part with that, there were a lot of the guys in the top 50 were girl dads, and so I think the daughters all were like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you since I was 9. It was that part was pretty cool too. As a dad, that's a neat thing.
I saw a picture, and I'm kicking myself for not having it handy to show you, but it was a picture of you coming off the field with one of your daughters on your shoulders. Do you remember this picture?
Well, I remember one time where I had my son on my shoulders, and I was holding the hands of my 2 daughters. But then again, my son was rocking the long hair. In the Hasselbeck house, if you're a boy, you can rock your hair as long as you want, because at some point it's going away. So that, maybe that was him. I don't know. It's a possible.
All right. Well, I owe you the finding that picture, and if it was your son, then so be it. But this game, talk about a game for a quarterback to break down for us. This was literally the most historic performance by 2 quarterbacks. There's never been a game where 2 quarterbacks threw for this many yards with this few incompletions in an NFL game, which for a defensive coach like Mike Macdonald, maybe not his favorite experience. But I'm curious, what did you witness, at least from the quarterback play in this game on Sunday?
Well, gritty, like everything we said, both these quarterbacks are 2 of the best quarterbacks in the game this year. If you just look at the math of it, I don't think people want to crown Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield as 2 of the top guys. They like to go with their, they still want to talk about the guys they always talk about. But look at the math. These guys are playing great football. And they're gritty. And I use the word gritty. What does that even mean? It means it's 3rd and 15 and I'm not flinching. I'm not freaking out. A lot of people, when you do a 3rd down breakdown in your playbook, it usually goes something like 3rd and 3 to 6, 3rd and 7 to 10, 3rd and 11 plus. When you get to 3rd and 11 plus, a lot of times it's hey, just let our punter punt. That's kind of the mindset. That's not the mindset of this group at all. Especially Baker. He's going for the throat. He's just hey, no, the heck with it. I don't care. We're still on offense. And you saw that. And I think, it happens with different sides of the ball, special teams, offense, defense. Sometimes you just kind of lay an egg. Your game plan wasn't great. Your execution wasn't great. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. Things don't go your way. I think the defense kind of had one of those days on, in critical situations, 3rd down probably being one of them.
Yeah, when you looked at that side of the ball, and with Tampa Bay having the football and the Seahawks playing defense, there's obviously a lot of wide open players at all levels of the field, on all sides of the field. Did you see that primarily as a Tampa Bay seemed to be coming in with the right game plan and found some weaknesses? Did you see it as Seattle had some schematic issues? Did you see it as players maybe misplaying or making some mistakes on defense? How did you kind of see that side of the performance?
All of it. No, I was mostly very impressed with Baker Mayfield. Emeka Egbuka, he was incredible. He is incredible. I mean, no Mike Evans, no starting running back. Like, you really thought, like, this is going to be a tough day for Baker. But he played amazing. I mean, some of those throws were amazing. Some of those routes were amazing. But at the same time, I think let's just talk about the first drive as an example. The Seahawks overcomplicated it, got too cute, over disguised, overthought it. Just line up and play. You got the crowd behind you. You could have a 3 and out. And if they don't overthink it and have like a really sort of like, I don't know, like bad disguise is like a good way to say it. Like, then you're off the field. Then the next 5 plays that you're like, oh, that was a great throw, or that was a great, like, they never even happen. You never give them the opportunity. So, like, how you start a game, everyone talks about it a lot. Like, hey, we got to start fast. We got to start fast. I think the way to do it offensively and defensively sometimes is just don't get too cute. And I thought that first third down, maybe it was even second down, I don't remember, but like, it was just like you gave them their first down, and you gave them the opportunity to go be great. But they didn't. I thought, like, if you look at it, I think that's a takeaway there that some of those plays never had to happen. And then defensively, yeah, like they just need to play together better. I think that would be like the number one thing. You can't have one guy disguising and nobody else disguising. I think that just it's so bad. You don't want to do that. And that's what, honestly, the Seahawks have done that in their distant past. I felt like they had gotten that kind of fixed, and I think they will get it fixed.
Yeah, there was a few plays, I'll admit, when I watched the game in real time, I was like, man, the cornerbacks really played a poor game. And I think they probably did. But there's a few plays where I watched again, and it was a Seahawks safety making kind of an inexplicable break towards the middle of the field when there was already someone else there and there was no one covering the top end and what should have been like a cover 4. And then another time where they kind of drove down on a post, and they on the 3rd and 15 touchdown that went past Nehemiah Pritchett, there was no safety help over the top. And so I'm curious, when you're playing the quarterback position, you've talked about how important safety is for what you're looking at. It seemed like Baker was having his way, maybe causing some of those things. How do you separate when the quarterback's kind of inducing those bad safety plays versus just the safeties making some mistakes?
Listen, I think like the takeaway for me, just being around Mike Macdonald and all his people, is the phrase shared experience. And so there really was no strong pass rush, so like if there's no strong pass rush, you're making it a lot harder for the guy, his experience on covering a 3rd and 15 play. And then the corners, they're banking on help from their safety. But if they're, both guys are not necessarily having a great rep, now you just put a real strain on the experience of the safety on that play. And so, like, it all works together. It's not as easy. Defense isn't as easy as just like run to the football. You do work together. So I'll just tell you, like, when you have a great pass rush, your DBs all look great. They go to the Pro Bowl because you can't block a certain guy. Like that just wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. So, like, I think those safeties, to talk about the safeties, were probably shocked that Baker Mayfield took the shots that he did, because the shots that he was taking, people don't do it. They're playing like, if there's a 3 receiver side and a 1 receiver side, you're either playing the 3 receiver side or immediately going to the 1 receiver side. Baker was going like, I'm looking at the single receiver, coming back over to the 3 receiver side. And then like, oh, you're overplaying that. I'm taking the corner post deep to the single receiver side. Like, no one does that. But he was doing it. And so like the safeties are probably like, man, but again, I think he just had too much time. So I think it's a shared experience for those guys.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We're talking to Matt Hasselbeck, top 50 Seahawks player of all time and Ring of Honor member. You talk about the pass rush, and one of the things the Seahawks have struggled with so far is edge rush. They have 0 sacks between Derek Hall and Boye Mafe and DeMarcus Lawrence. Uchenna Nwosu has 2. But it feels like there's a connection between that and the fact that the Seahawks defense, when they've had opportunities to close out games, have not been able to do it so far this year. They didn't do it against the 49ers. They didn't do it against the Cardinals. They didn't do it against the Bucs. How much do you think that those two things are related? And if not just that, what else would be reasons why they're not closing out these games on defense?
Well, I mean, listen, the ironic thing is that a great pass rusher, or any pass rusher really, they don't like when the play caller calls blitzes, because they don't get to use their pass rush moves usually. Usually they're responsible for like slicing a gap or occupying a lineman so you can allow a nickelback to come free, or a safety or a corner to come free. So sometimes you think oh, we got to get pressure, let's bring a blitz. Well, you're actually stealing an opportunity away from a pass rusher to use his pass rush moves. So there's not necessarily one way to do it. You kind of got to know your personnel. You got to know the scheme you're going up against. And I always thought as a quarterback, the hardest thing to go up against is a team that can get a rush with just 4 guys. So if you can get to the point where you trust your D lineman enough, edge or inside, wherever, to just get home with 4, that's so helpful for everybody. But if you have to do pressure too much, you're playing with fire a little bit, and it's either they're not ready for it and they don't have a sort of a hat for a hat, as they say, or they're going to make you pay. And I think Tampa, they were pretty dialed into
it. You've met Mike Macdonald before, right? This was not your first time getting a chance to meet him. What's your kind of take on Mike Macdonald as a coach and in general?
His humility is almost shocking. It's almost shocking. You're the head coach, second year, done a great job, top 10 defense last year, 10 wins, turning the roster over. They kick the quarterback to the curb. They get rid of DK. They get rid of Lockett. They, all this turnover, and he's still they're right there. And he's kind of who am I? Even after practice, when the top 50 players came up and, we kind of together sort of broke it down, he was like, wow. He's like, this is so cool that I get to be on the field with, I grew up watching you and you and you. And he was like, this is so cool for me. This is amazing. And the funny thing is I think we all were kind of oh, this is so cool for us. Oh, you're doing a great job, man. We're so proud of the job you're doing. You guys are building a foundation for what we know is going to be success. And so it was stuff like that. Another thing of coaches come in and they put their slogans on the wall, it's all about the ball, win forever, whatever the stuff is. And I think it's important, but from what I can tell, I don't think he did that. I think he came in, he was like, hey, listen, the players, what do you want this team to be about? What you decide. And he does the little kumbaya stuff that teams do to figure that out, but he creates space for leaders to emerge. And I know this, the best teams are the ones where the players are more invested and they care more than the coaches. And the coaches care all the way. This is their life. They want to this is all they want to do till 3 a.m, wake up at 4 a.m. That's their mindset. So I think he's doing a great job of sort of getting out of the way and saying hey, how can I help you guys all be successful? And I know it's more than that, but I think that's the vibe. And I don't know, it's just there's an authenticity to it, and it's something you appreciate. Hey, we got no excuse. Let's do it for him kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught the kind of incident on the sideline with Jonathan Gannon, the Cardinals head coach, and
I did, yeah.
and it struck me I posted about it, and I have my own opinions about it, but a lot of folks responded to my post with you don't know football. That's how coaches are supposed to interact with players and be tough, and you should be able to handle something like that. What's your philosophy on how coaches should show up for players, especially players that have made mistakes? If they're showing that they understand that they made a mistake? Like, what's your general view on that?
Yeah, it all depends. I mean, and I've been coached by Jonathan Gannon. He was a coach along the way in my journey, and so I know his personality. But I think it's both. Like there needs to be the Pete Carroll tell the truth Monday. Like there needs to be that at some point, whether it's publicly or privately. I think Jonathan Gannon probably regrets that was so public. But I mean, let's be real. Like those are real conversations. And I think it's good. It's healthy for the good of the team when you say it. Like, now listen, I'm sure the amount of guys that are like letting the ball go before they're in the end zone this year, I am sure it's been talked about. Someone put a film together. They talked about it in a team meeting. They practiced it. They did like whatever. Like that's when it's infuriating as a coach. Like we literally talked about this. We literally studied this. And then you go ahead and do it. You know, and so like is there a point in time when you put your arm around someone and you protect them when you're at the podium? Like, yeah, but listen, if Jonathan Gannon's not doing that, then somebody else on the team's doing that. You know, the running backs coach is doing it, or the linebackers coach is doing it, or like it could fracture a team. So I do think there needs to be accountability, and without having the volume, I don't know what he said, but I just, yeah, it's a. Can I just say one thing that Pete Carroll did that I thought was absolutely fantastic? He would encourage end zone celebrations. This is back when the NFL was like fining you and penalizing you for like any celebration or whatever. Like it was like the no fun league. He would encourage the celebration, but he had a rule. Like you had to tell your friends about it. Because like sometimes in the heat of the moment, you do something that's a penalty. Like I'll use like dunking on the goalpost as an example. That's a penalty. It became a penalty. And it's like the Jimmy Graham penalty. But Pete wanted you to talk about it, plan it, think about it. So we didn't have a penalty. And so he came off as being like the cool, fun coach, like players coach. Oh, you're the man. And my old coach didn't let me do anything. He's act like you've been there. And you're telling me like, oh, do something fun. But like what happened in that is like you're talking about it at lunch. Someone would be like, oh, I'm going to punt it into the stands. And they're like, your teammates would be like, well, that's a penalty. Like, what? That's a penalty? I didn't know that was a penalty. And so you're actually in a way sort of like protecting the team. You're like creatively coaching, so like, I don't know, like if I was coaching, I was just thinking about, I am coaching, but like if I was coaching like this generation of people, I would say like, hey, listen, this is going to be our thing. Okay. The end zone is right there, but that's not for us. Our end zone is the back of the end zone. Like let's just make it an inside joke with us. Like, I don't care if you guys are diving over the back of the end zone. Like we're going over the back of the end zone. Like just something fun and creative. And like you make it your thing. You see kickoff teams do it a lot. Even when it was a touchback, the kickoff teams would like sprint down all the way to the goal line, be like, no, like we're racing to the goal line. That's a way to show effort. So guys don't like assume that it's going to be a touchback. So I do think you just got to get creative with it. And then if they're not buying into that, then like, yeah, I'm losing my mind on the sideline probably too.
So the Seahawks now turn their attention to face the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had a big win last night against the Chiefs. And I don't know how much you caught of that. It was a complete Trevor Lawrence experience. He gets caught picking his nose on national TV and then has multiple false starts, or not false starts, delay of games because he can't get the playoff, literally falls down and then gets up and runs in for the game-winning touchdown. What do you make? I mean, Trevor Lawrence was kind of this prototypical number one overall pick, tall, strong arm, athletic. He just hasn't really been the guy so far. What do you make of that Jaguars team and Trevor Lawrence?
Well, we're getting them at the right time. Short week. They come off of this emotional win last night. I think they've got an international game right after. Like it's perfect timing. I didn't think Trevor Lawrence played that great. He was the star of the game and this and that. Like the delay games, like were costly delay games. Fundamentals, like if you're getting stepped on under center, like it's your fault, and you're taking a false step. I mean, he caught the Chiefs loafing. I mean, essentially, like that game should not have gone their way, but it did. And so, like, it's a formidable opponent. Liam Cohen, he was the offensive coordinator for the Rams. They're kind of running that system. So I think, like, for the Seahawks, they're gonna at least have a little bit of a jump start. They're gonna be like, all right, what's the scheme here? The scheme is what we see against McVay and the Rams, which is also very similar to what we see from our offense. So I think, like, to get back on track. at least mentally, I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I listen, what are they, 4-1 now, Jacksonville? So like the parity in the NFL is really incredible. There's no like, oh, this is the top team, and then there's everybody else. Like, I don't think it's that. I think that, the Seahawks are in that group of people that literally could look at their schedule and say, like, hey man, we could probably be undefeated if we didn't, like, play poorly in a couple instances. Jacksonville could do the same thing. So I'm excited for this one. I don't think this is it's not a scary opponent. It's not a scary situation at all to me.
You said something. I have two more questions for you, Matt. You said something earlier that all the guys feel like Mike Macdonald's building a foundation that's going to be successful. Why? What about it do you feel like is inevitably going to be successful?
I don't know if he still is, but he was the youngest head coach in the NFL when he was hired. He was kind of like everybody that I know that has coached with him or been coached by him or on a team. Like, they all say the same, like this guy's like a whiz kid. He's like the Sean McVay of defense. Like, he's going to be, so like, that's great. That's great. Like, those are good things. But to me, to be a great head coach, there's not like a certain style you need, but you need to like be a vision setter, a culture setter. Like, what's the DNA going to be? And I think he has been unbelievably good at that. Even the courage that it took to kind of completely switch the offense after the first year, because it wasn't the identity that he knew he needed for what he was building, like having the vision on it. And I think that's incredibly important. Is it perfect yet? Like, no, it's really not. I was having flashbacks when, they were backed up inside the 5, and Cooper Kupp had that great, on the deflection, he caught the ball. I'm like, all right, Clint Kubiak, love you, but like, you need to know what happened last year in the first game of the season. I don't think that's what we're trying. The risk reward for going it was that's not it. That's not what he's looking for. Like, what Mike's looking for is bring all your big people in the game, leave JSN at wide receiver, no offense, Bobo, and we're just going to take a shot with speed down the post over their safety. That's what he's looking for. So like, he's setting a vision for what this team is going to be. And so many coaches struggle when they be coordinator type people, struggle as a head coach because they're not vision setters and they're not culture setters. They're X's and O's guys. And I don't think that he's way more than that. So we're excited about him.
So last thing for you, Matt, granted it's still a blur for you, but was there a conversation you had with somebody you hadn't seen before, hadn't met before, that just you're going to remember from this weekend?
I got to talk to so many different people that I really never get to talk to. We shuttle bust everywhere. So like, you're having these, like, in traffic in Seattle's a thing. And so, one of the events was at the Chihuly Center, like up by the Space Needle. So we go from Renton to there, or like getting out after the game. The Mariners game was going on, and we went up to like the Space Needle to go back down to Renton, and there was a concert. Like, we're on the buses a lot. So I got to talk to like a lot of different people. It was fun. But no, there was a moment when we come out and you're like kind of going through the line, shaking the hands of like all the different legends. And it's cool. Like, oh, it's Steve Largent, whatever. But then when I saw Jim Zorn, it was different for me because he was my position coach. And ironically, of all the different people I got to talk to, I really didn't get to spend any time with Jim. I think a lot of people wanted to talk to Jim. And so like, we didn't connect too much. And so our real connection was on the field, like hugging, embracing. And he's like, congratulations. And I'm just like, thank you. Because when I was getting booed out of Husky Stadium, or when Mike Holmgren told me, hey, I'm usually not wrong about quarterbacks, maybe I was wrong about you. It was Jim that was like Mr. Miyagi, like, hours and hours of, hey, wax on, wax off. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And the creativity that he had in coaching me on and off the field was just really incredible. So there we are in our big Letterman jackets that are just like super heavy and super cool, but super hot. We're sweating and like we're hugging and it's loud. And it just was I don't know, like Jim Zorn has meant so much to me. And I think that was one of the reasons that I just wanted to mention in my talk, the position coaches, because every single one of those guys, I don't care if you're Chad Brown or Dave Brown or like whoever you were, like you would point to a position coach that isn't a household name that literally pushed you further than you ever thought you could be pushed. and challenged you in ways that you didn't want to be challenged, but helped you become what you became eventually as a person and as a player. And for me, Jim Zorn was such a gift. So grateful for him.
It's amazing. I wish that for you as a coach now that you have that experience and impact on some of the kids you're working with. And Matt, thank you again for another great show this week. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
All right. That is Matt Hasselbeck, top 50 player in Seahawks franchise history, Seahawks legend in the truest form, and happy for him. Happy for his family to have had that experience this weekend, and no better person to kind of share it back to us than Matt. Great storyteller as well as a great player, and I'm guessing a pretty good coach too. So wouldn't surprise me if he's having similar impact on other people that have been that he's experienced from coaches. So good stuff there. So there was some news that we'll catch up on from yesterday on injuries. So I will share that in a bit. Before I get to that, a couple things. If you have not gone to simplyseattle.com, look, I'm even wearing the hat that's right down there. Go to simplyseattle.com, use code HawkBlogger15, get 15% off. 15% off your purchase at Simply Seattle. It is the best Seattle sports gear out there, bar none. Whether it's Seahawks, Mariners, Huskies, Sounders, whatever it is that you like in the Seattle area, Storm, Sonics, I think all that, you got all that stuff. They've got it there. And the Mariners are playing in a few hours, assuming that the weather holds up for them. So go get some Mariners gear. Go get some Seahawks gear at simplyseattle.com using code HawkBlogger15. Also, head over to jkboots.com/hawkblogger. Best boots you will ever own. Perfect time getting ready for the fall to own these boots. I love my JK boots. They are awesome. I don't even have to wear my orthotics when these are the only shoes I don't have to wear my orthotics because the arch support is so good. It forms to your feet. These are all handmade. They take like 6 to 8 weeks to make these things. You go to jkboots.com/hawkblogger. You will get a great deal on these boots, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. We've had a bunch of people from the audience buy these, and everybody raves. So jkboots.com/hawkblogger. All right. So injury news. Where we are is that it started in the morning with Mike Macdonald giving a pretty ominous injury report. We talked about it on HB Mornings yesterday on the morning after show. And it looked like, well, Derek Hall might go on IR. And, Devin Witherspoon's getting imaging done. Well, what does that mean? And then we got to didn't know with Reek Woolen on his concussion and so on and so forth. So didn't sound great. Here's where we are now. Derek Hall is not going to play this week. I think that's pretty clear. He is now what Mike Macdonald's calling week to week and not likely to go on IR. So what does that mean? As best as I understand it, and I want to make sure I looked this up, so I think this is accurate. When you go on IR, it's for 4 games, not for 4 weeks. Why does that matter? Because the Seahawks have 2 games against Jacksonville and then home against Houston, and then they have a bye week. And so my question was, would going on IR mean that Derek Hall would be able to come back after the Commanders game, which is immediately after the bye week? Or would he have to wait for 4 games? Because that would be 4 weeks with the bye week. Or would it be 4 games, which would include the home game against the Arizona Cardinals? And from what I understand, it is 4 games, not 4 weeks. So this means that they expect that Derek Hall will be available at least for that Arizona Cardinals game, November 9th, and maybe will be available for the Commanders game in Washington for Sunday Night Football in week 9. So that's, I think, generally good news. It also means that they're not going to use that roster spot, which is okay. Like that just means he's going to be occupying a spot on the 53-man roster that will be inactive for at least the next couple of weeks, most likely. Devin Witherspoon got imaging done sounds like things are progressing positively. Mike Macdonald expects Devin Witherspoon and DeMarcus Lawrence to be practicing tomorrow to see if they can go. It does not mean that they will go, but he's expecting both of them to try to practice and see if they can play. So that's better news than we had to start yesterday. Julian Love, who I think we all can agree is a very critical part of this whole puzzle, is later than either Witherspoon or DeMarcus Lawrence. He will try to go later this week, but it's not clear he'll be able to. So they'll keep an eye on it, but he is a longer shot to be ready to play this weekend, which would likely mean more Ty Okada and Kobe Bryant as your back two safeties. Mike Macdonald was asked yesterday about whether Nick Emanwari can play deep safety, and he gave a he gave kind of an answer to avoid the question, but the implication was yes, he can play it, but I don't think that's where they plan to use him. So I do think it's Love. I think it's Okada and Kobe Bryant, and I think after that you probably get into Jarek Reed. D'Anthony Bell can play a little bit there, but D'Anthony Bell primarily is the guy they look at as the big nickel Nick Emanwari role. So we'll see. Maybe Jarek Reed gets more of a run, but my best guess is they'll stick with Ty Okada and Kobe Bryant if Julian Love can't go. Finally, Reek Woolen or Tariq Woolen, whichever you prefer, sounds like he's progressing through the concussion protocol quickly, and that Mike Macdonald sounded optimistic that Reek Woolen will be available for this game. So generally a more positive injury story than we had to start the day yesterday. I also found it was interesting. Mike Macdonald seemed a lot more at ease after this game than he did after the loss against the 49ers. It doesn't mean that he's happy, but he was much more generous with answering questions yesterday and not nearly as on edge as he had been after the 49ers game. I'm not sure why that is. And I asked Mike Macdonald at one point, how do you want to show up for your team after wins versus losses, like how you want to show up in those situations. Um, and let me play that for you. Let me play that real quick. Sorry, guys. I wasn't really planning to do this, but I think it's worthwhile for folks that didn't hear it to hear Mike Macdonald in this case talking about how he wants to show up for his team after losses, and does it differ versus wins? Players after a loss, and is it any different than you hope to show up for them after a win?
Well, I think you have to have a temperature for your team, what they need. I think consistency is important. You got to double down on like what your principles are. If you start chasing all sorts of different things and going down all these different roads, if I'm a player, I'm like, well, what the heck is a coach? What is he? What's expected around here? So, hopefully, we're clear on what we're chasing and put things in perspective and tell the truth. I mean, like the go through not around thing is like it's real. It's like how do you want to handle adversity? How do you want to grow as a football team? Well, do you actually want to grow? Do you actually want to take a next step, or do you just want to talk about it? So we prefer to actually do it.
I thought that was great. I thought it was really, really great from Mike Macdonald there. And the through not around of everything that we've heard from Mike Macdonald, chasing edges and, play a style that nobody wants to match and all that stuff. I mean, it's all has its place. But the through not around, I mean, it's not unique to Mike. I'm not saying he invented it. We've all heard that, I think, before. But I think that is the touchstone for his style and how he wants to approach things. He does not want to ignore or diminish or overlook the hard stuff. He wants to take it head on. And generally speaking, people that have that perspective on life do really, really well. And being comfortable with being wrong, being comfortable with facing something that you don't know the answer to, and with the humility that Matt Hasselbeck referred to, I think those are the building blocks for why Mike Macdonald has been as successful as he has been, as quickly as he has been. Now, I understand that the fan base right now, it's funny, there's a lot of folks that are like, oh my gosh, the Seahawks defense is fraudulent. They were terrible in this game. Mike Macdonald's terrible. I find that really hard to relate to. I think that's kind of a symptom of being a more casual fan. And I don't say that derisively. I think I'm a more casual fan of a lot of sports. And I probably have some opinions that are not as well informed. But this was a game that I don't think is representative of Mike Macdonald or this defense. As I was mentioning to Matt, and I wish I could show you guys the film. I can show you clips, but in fact, let me show you one thing. I'm going to try to find it on. I was talking with Mike Dugar yesterday in the media room. We were going through some of these plays and some of the plays where the safeties did the wrong things. Let me actually hold on. Let me pull this up, and I'm going to show you guys some still images from this because I can do that without getting a copyright strike. So this is the 3rd and 15. This is the 3rd and 15 touchdown that you see in the top part of your screen. The most outside receiver, Nehemiah Pritchett, is there. In fact, I can't for whatever reason, I can't highlight the screen, but if you see the topmost receiver, you see he's even with him right there. You also see Kobe Bryant is the safety. He's at about the 5-yard line at the top of the screen. And you see that there's this in-breaking route also at the 10-yard line where a receiver is about to run a post. Kobe Bryant in this play makes a kind of fatal mistake. He chooses to go after the in-breaking route as opposed to covering the top of this play. And so what you get is Kobe Bryant breaks down to help cover this receiver in the middle and leaves this massive space over the top in the end zone. So in real time, you see that and you're like, man, Nehemiah Pritchett just got completely burned. If you watch it carefully, that actually is a joint error. And this is what Mike Macdonald's talked about. That's what Matt Hasselbeck was talking about, where the whole team didn't do it. Also, there was a ton of time there. The other thing that I will share is on this play where they got like the huge completion down the field to Igbuka. And I want to make sure I've got the right one here. This was also a safety issue. In this case, it was a Tai Okada issue. So let me bring this back up and I'll show this to you guys. So if you look here, you've got at the bottom of the screen, Josh Jobe has this huge cushion on Igbuka, and you've got Tai Okada in the post, the deep safety behind Josh Jobe. Now, watch what happens here when you get Okada. For whatever reason, Okada breaks towards the middle of the field. So, like, where is Tai Okada going up here? Like, why is he breaking towards the middle of the field? We've got another deep safety. You've got a linebacker deep dropping, and he leaves Josh Jobe, who's expecting to have safety help over the top, completely exposed. So both of those plays are examples of where I think we've talked about the cornerbacks being a real issue. And I think they were. but safeties making kind of inexcusable decisions that contributed to that. And to Matt's point and to Mike Macdonald's point, there's also a heck of a lot of time and clean pocket for Baker Mayfield to operate in. So this is where rush and coverage don't really, match. But on those plays, I do really wonder how they'd be different if the safeties had made different decisions. If that was the only difference, I wonder if those plays would have resulted in incompletions instead of massive backbreaking, gains for the Bucs. Folks, if you have not already, a great chance to download the Sleeper app. Right now, you don't even need to make a deposit to get $20 to help make a pick, have some fun, play around with the app. It's a great place to go if you want to hang out with friends, talk via chat, get real-time updates, visualizations on all the stats. If you use promo code HAWKS, you'll also get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, so those are the main pieces there for what I was going to hit on today. Players' Day off on Tuesday, so won't be any press conferences. We'll get back to it Wednesday. And, one little note that I did share on Twitter that I thought was worth sharing here as well is that for people wondering about Cooper Kupp and where he is physically, I just was nosing around this morning and Cooper Kupp reached 20.5 miles per hour in the game on Sunday against the Bucs. That was faster than JSN. It was faster than any other Seahawks ball carrier. And that was the 8th fastest time in week 5 by any player across the NFL. I think that's notable. I'd also just remind people, as I've been kind of tracking this, Cooper Kupp has more explosive receptions. This is 16 plus yards. He has more of those than Jamison Williams, than DK Metcalf, than Devontae Smith, than Tyreek Hill, than Brian Thomas. So I think his separation is not great. He's not getting great separation, but he is making meaningful contributions to this team. And at this point, I'd say he's making bigger contributions to this team than Tyler Lockett did. And that's not because I'm down on Tyler Lockett, but in his last couple of years, he was not making that many explosive catches. He was more of a possession receiver, and that was super great. But you're getting some of the possession receiver stuff from Cooper Kupp as well as some of the explosives. I think he's been a fine complement to JSN. And then you add in Torrey Horton. I think the receiving room is definitely, Derek Young, like a lot of these guys have been making plays that have made that room, I think, better than almost anybody would have expected it to be. All right, everybody. Make sure hopefully you tune in. Hopefully the Mariners get a win today. Good luck to them. And thanks everybody who has tuned in today. I'll be back with you tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can get someone to join to preview the Jags. I'm already working on my tail of the tape, so keep an eye out for that on hawkblogger.com. Until then, I'm Brian M. Hauser. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.